Behind every undeniable brand are strategies most people never see until now. Each week, we're ripping open the playbooks of world-class innovators who've built massive communities from scratch. Real people, real results, real systems you can implement today. I'm Kendall LeJeune, and this is Tribe Tracks. Joining us on the show today is Steve Trang. Steve Trang is a man on a mission to create 100 millionaires by helping entrepreneurs build successful businesses. As the founder of Real Estate Disruptors Podcast, which reaches over 100,000 monthly listeners and has garnered more than 3 million YouTube views, Steve has revolutionized how real estate agents and wholesalers work together to build wealth. Through his disruptor selling system, he's helped thousands of clients generate millions in sales across various industries. Beyond his coaching success, Steve is a seasoned entrepreneur who has co-founded a bank, owns multiple real estate investments, and holds stakes in several thriving businesses. Steve is a leader who truly embodies his favorite Zig Ziglar quote, "You can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want." Please welcome Steve Trang. For those listening that might not have heard of you before or are very familiar with your work, tell us, what is it that you do? What's your main sort of focus?
My main focus today is just straight sales training. We just help people get better at sales, close more sales.
Amazing. Yeah. I love it. And so how did you get into that? Because obviously different entrepreneurs have tons of different sort of inroads into where they actually end up. And so how did you get into that?
I was not ever really anticipating this would ever happen. Never thought that this is a possibility, because if you met me 10 years ago, you might have thought I was an okay salesperson. If you met me like 15 years ago, I was like, this guy is a terrible, terrible salesperson. And so I got into it because actually I'm friends with Pace Morby. Yeah. And this was a time where he was still my general contractor and I was a real estate broker, but we were doing wholesaling. And so I was trying to get him to send me more deals when he was a home investor guy. And he kept saying, I have to sell them to Jamil. I was like, that sucks because we're friends. But anyway, he's like, look, if you want more deals from these home investor guys, like come hang out where we all hang out every Friday. I was like, there's a place where all you home investor guys hang out every Friday? Oh. He's like, yeah. That's his office up in Scottsdale. I was like, okay, what's the office? And he tells me it's Sandler. I was like, okay, I go up there. And I wanted to be in that room because I treated it like a mastermind. I was like, I know I'm going to make money if I'm in that room.
Oh, yeah.
And so I schedule a time to go there. I had no idea what the hell they did. I didn't do any research. I just walk into this guy's office and he's like, we do sales training. I was like, okay, cool. He's like, but this stuff doesn't work in real estate. I was like, fine, that's whatever. I'll make it work for real estate, which He's clearly lying. And then I pay him to join the group. And as I'm in there, I was like, it's cool to be in this room with all these other home investor guys. And I'm making money because I'm hanging out with these guys buying deals from them. But that guy that's talking in the front knows what he's talking about. And so he was the one that helped me piece it all together. All the books I've read, all my experience, all the CDs I've listened to, it all clicked when he shared his process for sales. And once I learned that process, I taught it to my team. I spoke at events like, hey, here's the conversations I'm having to buy houses. And as I did that, more people were like, hey, can you show me how to do that? Or, hey, I use your stuff. It worked for me. They're tagging me on social media. And the more and more people asked me to do it, the more people I taught. And I was, at this point, as an entrepreneur, I was like, I can make money doing this. So people were paying me. I'm teaching them. And then there comes a point in 2020, I do Closers Olympics. And it's this cold calling competition. And these guys, they invited me to join and do it. Like, you want to do it? I was like, oh, yeah, not only am I going to do it, I'm going to win. I'm going to sell a lot of coaching. That's my mindset.
Yeah, love it.
And I didn't win, but there was a guy with a lot of influence who saw it, who does a lot of deals. And he's, I want you to coach my team. And then that just spread like wildfire. So the guy was already making millions a year. And when he says, hey, Steve's the best.
Yeah.
I got a lot of coaching from that, a lot of business from that.
Oh, that's incredible. I love that. And I love that sort of like organic journey, right? Like it just develops and takes on a life of its own. So at what point in your journey did you decide, okay, I'm going to make this like a legitimate like arm of my business. I'm going to focus on like packaging, coaching and sales training. And I'm going to put this out to the masses. When did that come about?
It happened in 2019. So March of 2019 is like one of the most pivotal moments in my career. That's when I spoke at Max Maxwell's event, We Life 19. There were over 1,000 people in attendance. And so that's when that was the first time I shared it to people I didn't know. Because up until that point, I was sharing it with friends, colleagues, because we're always comparing notes. Hey, what are you doing for texting? How are you skip tracing? Which software are you using? What CRM? Here's what I'm doing. Here's how I'm having conversations. Like, we're all just comparing notes, right? As a matter of fact, Jared Vidalis is a friend of mine who's also another killer. And like, I was in his office and I was going through like he had this onboarding booklet binder. I was like, hey, can I just check out your onboarding binder? And I'm looking through it. It's like, Jared, this is me. This is my stuff. He's like, yeah, I know, it's pretty good. Oh, wow. Right? And so it was all friends and colleagues and competitors in the Phoenix market. But once I was in Dallas in front of 1,000 people and I shared it there, that was when like everyone's, hey, teach us what you do. And that's when I was like, wow. And so I remember my first event, I want to say it was May of 19. I sold 28 people at 1,000 a pop to come to a live event. And I didn't think I was going to get 5.
That's crazy.
I didn't think. It was just, I had my podcast. It's like, hey, I'm doing an event, comment below, whatever, DM me, whatever it was. And I talked to 60 people. I sold half of them almost. And I was sweating on these calls. People pay $1,000 to come hear me talk about sales. Yeah. They did. Wow. And that gave me all the confidence I needed to make it one of my main stables. Now my only stable.
That is incredible. I love that journey. As you mentioned something earlier about as entrepreneurs, I think we're always looking for, okay, how can we make a buck out of this? How can we monetize? That's one of our favorite words is how do we monetize? Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Have you always been like bent on teaching? Do you have a streak of, I want to teach? Do you enjoy that part of it? Or is it purely like from I like this, I like growing the business?
It's always been a part of me. It's one of my favorite things. I remember in high school, my science teacher was an inspiration. I still remember Mr. Williams. And I thought it was so cool the way he taught because the kids liked him. They respected him, right? He's teaching physics. Like, this is not the funnest thing.
Not the most exciting thing.
No. And so I appreciate it. I was like, man, one day when I'm rich, I'm gonna retire and teach in the high school because I think this is cool. Because I can't obviously do it as a full-time job being a teacher. That's just not going to work. One day when I'm rich, I'll come back and do this. So I remember doing that. And then like I had a brokerage. I had over 120 realtors. And when I was coaching them as a broker, like running a brokerage is not a profitable business, right? It's a nonprofit organization. We say that tongue in cheek, but it's also bad and true. And my best friend and accountability partner told me for years, shut down your brokerage. It's not profitable. I was like, but it's rewarding because I'm helping people and I'm teaching. It fulfills my passion. I don't care. Like, just shut it down. And so once I got paid to teach sales, all that pain of running a nonprofit organization, my brokerage, paid off because I had all the skills to teach. And now I can teach something that people will pay for versus a broker, which people want you to work for free.
Yeah. They call it a broker for a reason, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
I love that. That's very cool. So I resonate with so much of that story. My background, I was a high school band director. That was like what I did as like professional. That was my professional calling. And then, you made the comment about, obviously I can't teach full time. It wasn't until I got into it a few years and I was like, I love this. It lights me up. But like, I felt so limited in terms of the impact that I could make, just because of the financial piece of it. And so that's how I trickled into real estate. So definitely get what you're saying right there.
Yeah.
So let's jump back to 2019. So you had this sort of tipping point where you realized like people will pay me for my information, which is like that proof of concept had to have been like world changing, number one.
It's like doing your first wholesale deal.
Exactly. You're like, this works. Like people will pay me to do this. It's amazing. Yeah. So how did you start to put in these like official approaches to this is how I'm going to present what I am and what I do, like in terms of personal brand or packaging or anything like that? How did you approach that?
It was tough because people still know me more so as a podcaster than a sales trainer, I think, right? I think people know me more as that, the Steve Trang brand versus the sales trainer. So not nearly as many people know me as a sales trainer. So it required a lot of intention. And even then, I'll probably say I've not done well here. So it's still a work in progress. We had to shed some things. So I had a brokerage, I had a title company, I had a mortgage joint venture, I had all these other things. I shut them all down. So like wholesaling, flipping, we shut them all down. So now our message is concise, and it's only two things, right? It's sales training and the podcast. But it's hard still. All our content, like on Instagram, our best content is still our podcast. It's not the sales training. But we promote our sales training, or we share a lot of organic sales material on Instagram. But the podcast is still what people enjoy watching the most on there. And so the way I've actually grown it the best to date is just going to masterminds, just being the guy, right? Going to Collective Genius, Steve Trang is the sales guy. Going to the boardroom, Steve Trang is the sales guy. You go to Family Mastermind, Steve Trang is the sales guy, right? So that's how I'm building it. It's organic. It's not scalable. So I'm still cracking the cold traffic. So like today is the first day after the election, and our ads are already doing better because there's a lot of money. Right? There's a lot of money in the election, $16 billion or $15.9 billion in total.
Oh, crazy.
So today I was looking, I was like, oh, we already got 3 sales. Like we're positive today on our ads.
Nice.
Right? It's nice. So we're still cracking the cold traffic. But long answer to your question, right now, going to masterminds, being the sales guy, and cold traffic, those are our 2 strategies at the moment.
I love that. Now, you mentioned your podcast. At what point in your career did you decide I'm going to start this podcast, and why? How did that come about? What's the origin story of your podcast?
I was at an event, Dean Graziosi, The Edge, and this is in 2018, April of 18. And I remember going to this. My friend Vic Heredia gave me a ticket. He paid the $97. He gave me 2 tickets. I gave a ticket to a friend. So I go, and while I'm there, we got Brendan Bashar speaking on stage, right? Who's a high performance guy.
Yeah.
And so he's talking about get your story out there. People want to hear your story. Write a book, start a blog, or start a podcast, right? And like I had a book. It wasn't really anything special. Had a blog, nothing. Screw it. Like I'll start a podcast. I'll start a podcast. I'll give it 10 episodes. If it bombs, the best thing about failing at a podcast is nobody knows about it. Like nobody knows you failed because they don't know about it. So I had a lot of freedom for failure. So I was like, I'll just do 10 episodes, and if it bombs, then no one will know. That was a Saturday. I went on Facebook Live on a Wednesday. I said, guys, tune in. I'm going live on Facebook at 2:00 Wednesday next week. I didn't have a title. I didn't have a guest. I had nothing. I didn't know how to do a podcast, nothing. But I said, guys, tune in Wednesday next week, 2:00. We're going to go live. And so from there, the following week, we did our first episode. And so there was not a lot of thinking. There was not analysis paralysis. There's not doing this right way, wrong way. It's just screw it. We're going live on Facebook Live.
Messy
so 10 days from, hey, I want to start a podcast to we have a podcast.
We've got a podcast. We're rolling. That's amazing. Yeah. Okay. So what did that first phase look like for your podcast in terms of how you put it together? What was the focus? What was going on in your world in phase 1 of your podcast?
So the thing that I'm fortunate with was even though I was a nobody on a national stage, I still had a pretty good reputation in the Phoenix market because at this time, again, you're talking about 2018, I've had multiple years in a row where I was one of the top producing realtors in the Phoenix market. So like in the Phoenix market, if you're in real estate, you had an idea who I was. I wasn't like a big name, but you had an idea who I was. I was heavily recruited from brokerages, title companies were trying to get my business, mortgage companies were trying to get my business. So I was a pretty well-known brand on the traditional real estate side. And so when I started it wasn't hard to get people because I was already a known asset in the Phoenix market. And one of the best blessings is that I joke all the time, Phoenix is the guru capital of the world, but it's also true.
Yeah.
Right. And so my criteria was you have to do it in my studio and we have to do it live because at the time there were a lot of podcasts out there. You got Sean Terry, Joe McCall, and all these other people out there, right? Tom Kroll with Wholesaling. There's a lot of podcasts out there. How do you separate yourself? So I said, I want to separate myself. We're going to do it live in my studio and it's going to be on Facebook live streaming. That's how we're going to win market share. We had to be different. And then the other thing too was I had connections. When I said I was going to start a podcast, like I already had 2 different friends that owned their own podcast studios. So I just call them up. Hey, how much does it do to do a podcast on your show? $100. All right, great. Thanks. Let me call you back. Call my other friend. Hey, how much does it cost to do a podcast in your studio? $500 an episode. Okay, great. I'll call you back. Call back to the first guy. It's a deal. Right?
Sold.
Sold. So $100 an episode, professionally produced. I got a producer running everything live with cameras, like multiple cameras already, with a switcher, mics, everything set up, soundproof walls. So like from episode 1, it was already professional because I already had the connections. I already had the who. I didn't have to figure out the how. I already had the who.
That's good.
Yeah, and then the first guest was a friend. Wasn't hard, and we crushed it on episode 1. And another thing I did that worked really was always reaching out to people with influence. So having Carlos Reyes and Sal Shakir, having Alex Saenz, having Jalen White, having big names, Brent Daniels, come onto your show. Max Maxwell, that was one of the biggest ones.
Yeah.
That's how we grew. It was organic. And because, again, Phoenix is the guru capital, I was able to grow up pretty fast locally. So that would make sense for someone like a Max Maxwell to fly in and do the show.
Wow. That's interesting. So for those listening that might not be super familiar with your podcast, can you give us a little context of what is it? What is it about? How does it all function? What's the breakdown of it?
So for the longest time, everyone knows it as Real Estate Disruptors. We rebranded to Disruptors in May of this year because I've stopped focusing on the real estate side. But it's still very heavily real estate because that's what I'm known for. But the people we have on the show are people that are generally entrepreneurs, or they're entrepreneurs, but generally real estate entrepreneurs that are either wholesaling or flipping. And so they're doing a lot of business. We don't have people coming on that are there just to pitch a product. Are they pitching products? Of course, like they're business owners, they're entrepreneurs, right?
Sure.
But they're legitimate. They're doing deals. They're doing real business. Because one of the things we require is you have to send settlement statements. You have to show me HUDs.
Wow.
If you're going to make a claim, on the show, you need to back up the claim with documentation. I'm not going to have you on the show without being able to document what you claim.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Yeah. So do they have something to sell? Yes, of course. Right. Like we're all trying to monetize, like we said earlier, but they're doing real deals. So we talk about their journey. We talk about their hero's journey, what their business looks like today. How are they able to do what they do? What were the adversities and challenges and how they overcame it? And then it's a deep journey into their personal story, their personal life. Because we do our average episodes like an hour, 15, hour and a half. So we go through their life, how they got there, and then how they got to where they are. And again, the trials and tribulations and then the success.
That's incredible. And your podcast has over 100,000 downloads a month, millions of views on YouTube. It sounds like you grew pretty quickly because you had a lot of these elements in place. How soon did you start hitting that? What was the first milestone that you hit that you were like, oh, I think we might be onto something here?
It was really the second episode. Because on the second episode, we had 120 people, I think, on Facebook Live watching simultaneously.
Wow.
So the highest we ever got was like 300 simultaneous on Facebook Live. So like that told us people care about what we're talking about. And then the iTunes side was slower to grow, but you just keep pushing it and it all works out. So we knew from episode 2. Episode 1 was pretty good, but episode 2, we knew. Now, again, we had Carlos Reyes, who's a big name in the Phoenix market, right? And we were very intentional with who we had on the show to edify the show.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. So can you talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges in running a live podcast format?
For me, I guess when people show up late, and by the way, we don't even do it live anymore because it's no longer advantage today with StreamYard and everything else. It was an advantage then. But for me, people showing up late, they didn't account for traffic, but for the most part, I actually prefer to do it live because when someone's recording, I'm not as natural. If it's streaming, I'm natural because who cares? Like you screw up, people are forgiving. They don't care if you're saying the ums and ahs and so on. If you have to like shuffle paperwork, people are forgiving.
Yeah.
But if it's produced and then you screw up the editing, people are not so forgiving. So for me, because the standard is lower, I felt way more comfortable with a live show than a produced show.
Wow. That's really interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. So as a host, how do you go about, what's your flow in terms of preparing for an interview, your research process? What does all of that look like?
So our research process is an area we have room for improvement, right? I say this even though we've been doing this for 6 years. They have to fill out an application. They have to fill out a form, right? And it gives like their bio, their list, or not their list, their links to all their socials. And we have a bunch of questions that we want 3 interesting statistics about you, describe your story, and so on. And so that tells us a lot about their story. And then the rest of it is just me pulling out organically, talking to Kendall. Hey, Kendall, tell me how you got into real estate. What's your life like right before you got into real estate? And then what you do, and what about after that? And the point here is I want to hear your story, and everyone's story is different. And so I want to hear your story and what was your challenge? What did you overcome? How did you overcome it? What lessons did you learn from it? And now what does your life look like today? And so a lot of the questions are pretty organic because it's your story.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of the value comes in. I'm sure like I as a listener of your podcast, like that's the part that I love the most is like being able to hear all of the juice of life and like, how did you come about to be where you are? So it's very cool. I love that.
Yeah.
So can you talk about what your team looks like in regard to your podcast? You mentioned a producer earlier. What does that look like?
So today we have 2, I would say maybe 2.5. So we have 2 media guys, right? So one guy, he does the video, the editing, the lighting, and so on. And another guy who does the graphics and the captions and this and that, and the thumbnails. Got to have thumbnails, right? And then we have another person, Summer, who schedules everybody. If people are interested, she has access to my text messages. She has access to my emails, my Facebook Messenger. So like whenever people express interest, she takes care of all of that. And she sends the application link and the scheduling and all that. And then she does if you ever see on Instagram, the welcome sign when they come in, because we create something nice and special for them when they come in. And then so that's what they take care of that. And then we have another VA who, after our team edits and uploads it to YouTube, he takes care of the iTunes side, make sure that's good. And then he sends them the MP3, the MP4, and the thumbnails, all those stuff if they want to promote it to their audience. And then our media team, the same 2 guys, they chop up at least 3 snippets from the podcast afterwards to help promote it. So basically 2 full-time guys and then 2 VAs or two admins that do it on the side.
That's great. And so how soon did you start building out the team whenever you started your podcast?
So I started building out everything in 2020. So I started the podcast in 2018, May of 18. But what really drove me to build out the team, I didn't want to build out a team, to be honest with you. But the reason why I did was the studio. My friend that had the studio, he went from $100 an episode to $200 an episode, which is fine. Okay, I get it. It's business. But then he relocated like 30 minutes away. I was like, I can't travel 30 minutes and pay $200. So at that point, I made a business decision to bring it in-house. And this is at a time where, if you remember, there was a moment where people started chopping and repurposing their content a lot, right?
And it was everywhere.
Everywhere. So like when we had that moment in time where people were repurposing everything, I was like, I might as well just hire that in-house. It was around that time. So he raised the price. He moved away. Repurposing was a thing. I was like, I might as well just bring this in-house because they're not going to do the repurposing. So I might as well bring that in-house.
Yeah. Got it. 2 years into the journey, that's when you started building out the team. At what point did you decide to start monetizing? Are you monetizing the podcast? What does that component of it look like?
So we've always gotten affiliates. It's not a lot, but we've always gotten affiliates. But we recently started charging for people to come onto the show. And we've heard some feelings doing that, which I get. I understand. Like people are like, why don't you do it for free? But I will tell you, 2022 was actually a pretty tough time for me, right? Because I was still wholesaling and everything else. And like the Phoenix market just got crushed, right? When the interest rates jumped up just 50 bips, everyone lost their goddamn minds, right? People weren't buying. Sellers still wanted the old price. Buyers want this cataclysmic price, right?
Yep.
And so our wholesaling business came to a complete standstill, right? And so the expenses don't go away just because revenue goes away.
Exactly.
Expenses are expenses. And at this time, I want to say I was spending like 130 or so a month, right? 130 grand a month, just keep everything going between marketing and everything.
Yeah.
And so we got to a point like, guys, I can't keep everyone here. The way things are going, we're going to have to let some of you guys go. And the media team basically said, no, that's not an option. And we've been telling you for years to charge for the podcast, and you have fought us every step of the way. And so if you're going to have to let us go, how about you start charging people like we said you should, and then you get to keep us? It's like, that's fair. Right?
Okay, I'll give that a shot.
So we started charging, and people paid, and so we were able to keep our guys.
Wow.
But it took balls on their end, right? So no, Steve, like we've told you this, and you fought us on this. Like it's true, because like it felt wrong and disingenuous to charge for a podcast, right? It felt wrong because like you're doing this out of the goodness of your heart, which you can when life is good, but you can't so much when life is not as good. Yeah. And so now we had a situation where we had to charge, and I'm so grateful for my team. They pushed back. They're great people. And I love the fact that they had the courage to just talk to me, because I'm the one that signs the checks. Like, talk to me in a way, look, you have to do this. So we did. So we charged $2,500 an episode. And we're probably going to start charging more because of the reach. But at the moment, that's where we're at.
Yeah, it takes great leadership to trust your team and say, okay, I'll do it, and now let's give it a shot. So kudos to you. It sounds like it's a team effort to take the podcast to the next level. I love that. So what's your goal for the show now? Where do you see it going? You mentioned that you switched over, left just the real estate niche and now broaden it up a little bit more. What's the goal, vision?
So the vision is to be an entrepreneurial podcast. That's why we just call it Disruptors versus Real Estate Disruptors. People I look up to, you got Entrepreneurs on Fire, you got Patrick Bet-David, right? Like I've had people compare my style to like Joe Rogan, and and that's an incredible compliment. And I would love to have something like that. Like, truth be told, this whole election cycle, I got massive podcast envy, right? It's like Andrew Schultz has got Trump, Joe Rogan's got Trump, and people have asked me for a long time, who's your dream guest? Massive podcast envy, but I would like to get to a point where we have enough influence still on the entrepreneurial side, not just a podcast, but I still want to inspire hopefully millions of people on the gospel of capitalism and entrepreneurship, because I think a lot of people, like at some point in our lifetime, profit became a bad word, right? And like price gouging is an acceptable term to talk about in public discourse, which is insane to me. And so I want to push back and really go hard that you don't have to go get a regular job. You can have another way to make money. And this is my way to inspire that message, to let everyone know, hey, if schooling and working 9 to 5 is not for you, there's another way. And that's something that I'm really passionate about. I know, like, I've been really fortunate because I could have stayed the W-2 path. I really could have, right? I had a really good paying job as an engineer. I just was unemployable, right? But there are a lot of people that the schooling system just doesn't work for them. Right. But hustling does. And so I like to see this. I mentioned Pace Morby earlier. He's a good friend of mine. I still remember back, I want to say either late 2020 or maybe 2021, we had a conversation. It was like, dude, they're printing so much money. It's going to cause massive inflation. And I'm not worried about you or me. We're going to be fine no matter what. I'm worried about all our friends that have W-2 jobs whose their wages will not increase at the same rate. And I still feel the same way. I want an opportunity for everyone that doesn't fit into a mold as an opportunity to thrive. So that's my vision for the podcast.
That's beautiful. And it's so true. I resonate with every bit of that. The fact that there are people out there that don't either have just the knowledge of another option is out there. There are opportunities everywhere. I think that's amazing, incredibly empowering. And which brings me to my next question. So I know that in your bio, you talk about how one of your visions is you want to build 100 millionaires. So can you talk to us a little bit about that and how that came about?
Yeah. So Andrew Carnegie, he hired Napoleon Hill to write Think and Grow Rich. And at a moment in time, he was the wealthiest man on the planet. And there was a point, we're talking like late 20s, early 30s. Somebody asked him, like, Andrew, you've got 18 millionaires that work for you. How is that possible? And you got to think about a millionaire in the 20s and 30s.
30s, that was serious.
That's a lot of money, right? And it's not a billionaire, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Right? And they asked him, like, how is it you're able to make this happen? Like, how can you possibly get them to work for you? And he's like, you're asking the question wrong. They're millionaires because they work for me, right? And that has always been an inspiring message for me, because like, I can make everyone around me wealthy. And so that's my purpose. And it ties directly with Zig Ziglar. Yeah, you can have anything in life you want so long as you help enough other people get what they want. If I make everyone around me wealthy, I'm good. I will never have to worry about anything, at least as far as finances goes.
That's so good. That's so good. And I love it. It's a creative endeavor, right? Like it's like creation at at the very fundamental core of that, which is incredible. So can you talk a little bit about how that has impacted like your business decisions, how you've grown your brand, how you've grown your business? How has that shaped things for you?
The way it's been good and bad. Bad, I'll start with the bad. The bad thing is you have people that take advantage of you, right? That's just human nature. People that will take everything from you and then go off to compete against you, which is fine. That happens, right? Another thing, too, is because I want to take care of people so much, honestly, the last couple of years have been tougher for me because I want to take care of everyone. So when things got hard, I still try to find a way to keep everyone employed and keep everyone working for me at my company, right? So those are the ways that it's been bad. But the way it's been good is that the people that are here are loyal. They're fiercely loyal. They will protect me. They will fight for me. Just like when I was like, hey, I'll let you guys go. They're like, no, that's not an option. They're like, here's what we're going to do. And so I've been able to build incredible leaders. Like a lot of people are like, they want to hire employees. Like I want to hire leaders. I want to create leaders. Because if I create leaders in my organization, then again, life's going to be good. I don't have to make all the decisions. They'll make the decisions. And it's been good for me because I've got the most amazing people that you can't even recruit from. It's actually funny. I was in a mastermind. It was a realtor mastermind. And the lady straight up asked me, this is a mastermind. We're in the same room. And she said to me, Steve, why can't I recruit from you? I was like, well, that's an interesting question. Right? But I was like, yeah, I'll show you. And I did a whole presentation on leadership and how to be like unrecruitable. Like how to create an organization that people can't recruit from.
Oh, wow. So, good.
Yeah. And so it goes back to, we care about the people here, right? It's not just lip service. A lot of people say they care about people. Like, no, like we legit care about our organization, the people in it.
Yeah. So it sounds like that's one of the core pillars for your personal brand. Mm-hmm. How do you go about communicating that whenever you are presenting your brand, when you are creating messaging? How do you communicate that pillar?
Truthfully, again, I think we've not done a good job of this. I think the only part we've done well is saying we're on a mission to create 100 millionaires. Beyond that, I don't.
That's a great line, but not line, but it's an impactful statement. I'll say it that way.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's the one area we've done well, but beyond that, I don't think we've done it as well. However, where it shows up very well is in our sales conversations, right? Because like when I'm meeting with Kendall and I want to buy his house, I'm going to find out about Kendall. Let's figure out what's going on. What makes him tick? What's he worried about? What's he losing sleep over? How long has he been worried about this? Where does he want to go after we buy his house? Tell me more about that house. And I'm really intentional that when I buy your house, it's going to help you. And if we figure out me buying your house isn't the best fit for you, I'm just going to tell you that, right? And so I'm working with you. I want to buy your house. I want to make a lot of money. That is not hidden from this conversation. I want to make money here. I'm doing this for profit. But you're going to feel good about it. You're going to feel taken care of. You're going to feel validated and seen, appreciated as a human being. And so that's how we convey it for sure in all our one-on-one conversations with homeowners, with our clients that we're selling sales training to. That's all encompassing in our daily conversations.
Yeah, I love that. It really seems like it helps to keep the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
That's really fantastic. So let me ask you this, Steve. I know that we run in some of the same circles and we have a lot of mutual friends. Many of our friends are also in information businesses. There's a lot of mainstream talk right now about the anti-guru approach. Right, in the information sales space. So, can you talk a little bit about how you navigate that, and just what do you think of that in general? Just the whole like anti-guru kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a funny world, right? Because it's been that way for some time. It's been a few years. I'm not really too worried about it. I think for me, we vet the people that come onto our show. That's why it's important to me. But unfortunately, one of the principles of having a capitalistic environment or economy is caveat emptor, buyer beware. So like everyone has to do their research, unfortunately. So the anti-guru thing, like I roll my eyes. I don't associate with people that don't do deals. If they're a guru, it's obvious they're a guru. Like I don't spend time with them. I am intentionally distancing myself from them. There are a handful of gurus that you'll never see me hanging around with because I don't want to give them a platform. But beyond that, I think it's healthy to have skepticism. I'm naturally skeptic, maybe overly skeptical when I first got into business. If they're so good, why would you sell this information? Just keep it to yourself and be so successful. But beyond that, I don't think it should be policed. I don't think we should tear each other down. Maybe there's a place for it. But yeah, I think it's just one of the prices to pay for a free market economy and capitalism is caveat emptor. You have to do your research before you buy from who you buy.
Absolutely. That's so true. Couldn't have said it better myself. So let me ask, I know that you've got a pretty impressive following across multiple social media platforms. I think 84,000 plus Instagram followers, 42.3 thousand YouTube subscribers. So how did that come about in terms of getting those numbers there and building that online following?
It's just showing up every day. Like the most boring, mundane answer.
Which is typically what it usually is, right? For anything, any fundamental success is show up every day.
Just show up every day. Because there's a couple of times where we went viral, which we didn't know we would go viral. There's that. But that doesn't happen if you don't show up every day. So you create content. The way I've compared creating content for myself is most people don't want to pick up the phone and cold call. I actually don't want to create content. I really don't. I'm not excited about it. At the same time, I recognize that it is an income-driving activity. It's not direct, right? It's not like if I create content today, I'm going to get revenue tomorrow. But there's a compounding effect. It's a long game. And so show up every day, provide value, don't mail it in. Like when I do my podcast, I'm doing my podcast. I'm not checking my watch. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not getting distracted, right? Like it's a serious business. When I'm creating content, we have the best doing it. We don't have someone doing it as a hobby. Like we have guys that are doing this. They know what they're doing. Another thing too is everyone we hire loves what they do, right? Manny, our video guy, he watches videos on YouTube on the weekends on how to be a better editor. Total nerd. It's great, right?
Yeah.
Our guy that does the thumbnails, he went to school for graphic design. He's passionate about graphics, right? He's, no, Steve, this has to be the color scheme. For this shade of yellow, it needs to be this shade of green. I was like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. Just make it happen.
Right? If you say so.
Yeah, like it has to be this font. So I think there's elements of we hire people that are excellent at what they do because they love what they do. They would do it for free if they could. Or if that was an option.
Yeah.
If all their needs were taken care of, they would do it for free. So I think there's elements of that as well.
That's a really good point. So speaking of passion, what is your passion? What are you passionate about?
It's learning. Right now, this exact moment is marketing. I'm just studying the hell out of marketing. But human psychology, I've been studying really hard for the last 6 years. My passion is still probably basketball, even though I'm not good at it. I still play it 3 times a week in the mornings. I was pretty hot for Kung Fu for a bit. Not as passionate right now. I would say probably it's just funny. Like I'm still the same person as I was in high school. Like, I just love playing basketball. If I could just play basketball all day, every day. That's all I
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You have a favorite basketball team or anything like that?
The Suns, right?
Yeah.
Like
right.
It has to be. I don't watch as much as I used to. Part of being an entrepreneur is it's a bit of a distraction.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Entrepreneurs know about distractions.
Yeah, but yeah. So I would say it's still basketball, and at the moment, fortunately, it's the Suns.
Got it. Love it. Talking about distractions, obviously entrepreneurs have, I think we all fall prey to this, is the shiny object syndrome. And so this decision to broaden your podcast from just real estate into other entrepreneurs, how long had you been thinking about making that leap, and what kind of precipitated that?
Because again, we talk about shiny object syndrome. I first thought about it in 2019.
When...
So
this is like a year in. You were doing this real estate podcast, and you're like, I think I might want to start opening it up.
I was thinking in that because at that same event for We Lab 19, I got to share a stage with Gary Vaynerchuk, right?
Gosh,
so like it's a big freaking deal. So immediately I go like, where can this go? Not where do we go today? Where do we go tomorrow? But like, where can this go? So like in 2019, I was thinking like probably like we'll just go just general entrepreneurship, but we didn't take any action on it until December of last year. So I had this vision of where we can go, but how we get there, how we got there wasn't clear until December of last year. And the way we got clear on it was we did an exercise of the vivid vision. So Cameron Herold wrote a book called Vivid Vision. I went and did an exercise. And as I wrote out my vivid vision for what my business is going to look like in December 26, it was pretty clear real estate wasn't in there. And so then once we saw that, then we're like, hey, at some point in 2024, we're going to remove real estate from the podcast title.
Did you have some anxiety about that?
I had the most anxiety about stopping real estate because that's my identity, right? Like I bought my first property in 2005. Like my first, supposed to be a fix and flip, became a rental, became a foreclosure, right? But 2005 was the very first property we bought for investment purposes after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I've been a real estate guy since 2005, buying properties. I became a licensed realtor, quit my W-2 job in 2007. So 19 years of being a real estate guy, no longer a real estate guy. That was the most stressful, like removing that identity.
Yeah. And like, what mindset did you have to have in order to just bite the bullet and say, this is my next chapter and I'm going to pull the trigger on it?
It goes back to having that vivid vision and like planning and having a future, right? One of my best friends, he's my accountability partner, best friend since 7th grade, but we've been accountability partners since 2011. We met every month, right, for 13 years. And the same guy that told me to shut down my brokerage, right? He sold his company for tens of millions of dollars.
Wow.
And he's been in my ear the whole time. When are you building a business you can sell? When are you building a business you can sell? Of all the businesses I have, there's only one that is sellable. And that's the sales training. And in order to be the best at that, everything that's not in alignment with that has to go away. There's a quote I saw on Facebook of all places, right? Until priority number 1 is done, priority number 2 is just a distraction.
Oh, that's good.
And it's like real estate's not it.
That is good. Wow. You made the decision, you pulled the trigger, you shed the real estate identity component from your podcast. What challenges did you have in taking that next step of branching out to non-real estate people?
Again, going back to this, like pretty bad. We're not doing so good a job here, right? Like everyone that's coming on the show pretty much is still a real estate guy. We need to provide a little more attention there. So even though we've rebranded it, our intention of outreach has been pretty poor. So that's an area for improvement for us. Even though we're more focused, it's still somewhat fractured, right? It's so hard to be crystal clear. So it's
new level, right? Yeah, I totally get that. So let me ask you this: the way that you guys structure the show. You mentioned like when you first started, you said I'm going to do 10 episodes and then make a decision. Do you guys operate in seasons? How do you break down how do you keep like a consistent every week we're going to have a podcast or every 2 weeks? What does that look like in terms of like consistently getting out content on your podcast?
What's incredibly fortunate is that we've done pretty well. And so we have people constantly reach out to us. So that's how we kept it going. We haven't had to do outreach, and I think that's the reason why we've done a piss poor job of reaching out to people outside of real estate. It's because we saw real estate people reaching out to us, and so like we have the low hanging fruit.
Got it.
So that's the reason why we don't have seasons. We don't have anything like that. It's just been episode 1 to episode 2 to 300 something now. It's just
wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. 300. How many episodes did you say?
I don't know. I lost count.
Yeah, lost count. Yeah, it freaked me out the other day. One of my team members, we were planning the next few episodes on my other podcast, the Only Land Fans podcast, which is just like a land niche podcast. And she's like, we're coming up on this next stretch is going to be the 100th episode. And I was like,
nice.
How does that even happen? Like you just lose track. It goes by fast. It goes by fast.
It does.
So you also have the video versions of your podcast, right? So you're recording the videos, you're releasing that as content. Can you talk a little bit about what your video content strategy has been around promoting that? Like you mentioned some repurposing, but do you use that as well for like marketing to promote the podcast? And what does that look like?
So something we did this year, we started doing this year, is we found the most pivotal moment. Right. This is the most emotionally compelling part of the episode. We find that and we create a 30-second snippet around that. And we add a cliffhanger to it where you have to watch the episode to find out what happened. Right. So we take the most emotionally compelling part and chop it up and then add, again, the captions. But it's not the traditional captions on Instagram. These are more, elegant's the right word, but it's different. Right. So we have that. We chop it up. We post it on Fridays. And then we release our podcast, our video ones, on Sundays at 9 a.m. Arizona time. And so what we started doing literally in the last couple of weeks is taking that episode and then sharing as a story when the YouTube episode goes live with a link to the YouTube episode. And also uploading that same video onto Facebook and then sharing the YouTube and iTunes link below it.
Cool.
That way we can send more social signals to YouTube, say, hey, people are sharing this.
Yeah.
From Instagram and Facebook and so on.
That's smart. So do you guys release the audio version and the video version at the same time?
We do. Approximately the same time.
Around the same time. Cool. That's really cool. That's really cool. So let me ask, for someone that's listening to this and they're like, man, I really would like to start a podcast. I've just been, I can't seem to get off the ground. What advice would you have for those people listening?
It's the same advice I give someone that's thinking about getting into real estate, even getting married or having kids, right? Is that there's no right time, and yet we always figure it out. Look at how many people that had kids unexpectedly, and they seem to be fine. Now, are they stressed? Sure, but that's the entrepreneurial journey. But
welcome to Stress Town.
Right. But they figure it out. When's the right time to quit your job? Like now. Don't try to get a bunch of money in the savings account. If you're unsatisfied and it's soul crushing to go to work, like now is the time to quit your job. And so for people that are like on the fence about starting a podcast is, what do you have to lose? Like I said, for me, logically, if it sucks, nobody will know. Yeah. It's so freeing. Right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's good. That's really good. And like, the way you started your show, you're like, in a week we're going live. It's on. That's fantastic. That's so good. So when you're thinking about your personal brand, what types of pillars, we've talked about wanting to make helping to create 100 millionaires. What other pillars would you say make up your personal brand if you had to define it?
I think people know when I say something, it's true, because I don't push affiliates for the sake of pushing affiliates. If I wanted to, I could be making multiple six figures a month from affiliates if I wanted to, right? But I don't, because I don't push it unless I use it, right? Yep. I think people know when I say something, it's true, it's real. I think that's a big part of my brand. It's interesting. I'm not sure if this is my brand, but this is my reputation. People think I'm very honest. Not honest. They think I'm very like serious and no nonsense. And then they come to my live events and they're like, wow, like the Steve we know is not the Steve that's here. because they're like, the two things we get is like, we didn't realize how inappropriate and vulgar Steve can be. And they said, we didn't realize you were this funny. So like, those are the two things that we get. So I guess that's my brand, but it's not my brand because that's my reputation, but that's not who I am.
Yeah. Why do you think people think that?
Because I take the podcast serious, and I'm very, what's the word I'm looking for? Respectful for my guests. And it's about the guests. It's not about me because it's the hero's journey. It's not about me. It's about the guests. So I don't really have a lot of my personality on it. I have my curiosity, I have my questions on it, but I don't have a lot of Steve Trang on it. So it's all about highlighting the guests. I think that's part of it. And I think running multiple businesses, people think you just work all the time, which is true. We work a lot, but we also have fun. Like one of the things we ask women, you might consider this sexist, but like when we interview women that work here, we say, hey, I just want you to know this place often sounds like a locker room. Are you okay with that?
Just hate company culture.
Just putting that out there. If you're expecting to go complain to HR, this is not the company.
Yeah, rethink that.
Yeah, but yeah, I think just because I'm so serious, or I'm always intentional and serious, they think I'm no nonsense. But like people that know me well, like I get a lot of what's wrong with you. Like, why would you say that?
Because I'm Steve Trang. That's why I would say.
Because it's real for me.
Yeah, there you go. That's so good. So you're obviously a very gifted interviewer. You mentioned that whenever you sit and do these interviews that you make it about the guest. What other, if you had to give like maybe 2 other pieces of advice to help someone that's looking to become a better interviewer or to maximize their interview game, what advice would you give those people?
First one is pick up a book by John Maxwell, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. It's all about question asking. So I would say that's the first one. And then see, what's the second thing? Understand the hero's journey, guys. I mentioned it a moment ago, right? If I'm going to buy Kendall's house, I'm going to talk to him like how he got the situation, what's going on, why did this happen, how long has he been dealing with this. We're going to talk about Kendall's problems. We're not talking about, hey, I'm the best. You should sell your house to me. I'm the biggest. I'm well known. I got all the money. People love me. Look at all my Yelp reviews, all these other things. I don't talk about me, right? I talk about Kendall. Hey, how'd you get into this situation? How long have you been dealing with this? Who else knows about this? What happens if we can't help you? Right? So I'm talking about Kendall. When we have a person on the show, we're talking about the guest. So if you look at it, there's a story format. It's called the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is about the hero and the guide. And so many people want to be the hero of the story. You're the guide. In an interview, you're the guide. And what I mean by that is don't make it about you. One of the reasons why I can't listen to other people's podcasts is that the host talks too goddamn much. And shut up. I didn't listen to this for you. I know who you are.
Yes.
I listened to this episode because your title had to do with the guest. I don't want to have, let's just say, Donald Trump. Could you imagine if Donald Trump was on that interview with Joe Rogan and Joe Rogan was just talking about himself the whole time?
Yeah, would not have been good.
It wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
And so I say, again, good leaders ask great questions, and then just understand the hero's journey, and then do your best to format your podcast episode along the lines of the hero's journey. I did that not on purpose. I did it intentionally or completely by accident. But once I studied the hero's journey, I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. This is why one of the reasons why people like our episode is that it completely follows the hero's journey.
Yeah. Makes total sense. It makes total sense. That's why they always say like that hero's journey trope. It's in so many classic movies, Star Wars. There's a reason why it's one of the fundamentals of storytelling. It's really cool.
It's the reason why we all know about Homer's Odyssey, right? Because people were illiterate for a majority of human history. And yet we all know these old stories.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I love that. So what would you consider to be your superpower?
So I have 2. Per my own opinion, right? My own self-diagnosis. Understanding something at a deep level, right? Just like learning, just at a deep level. And then being able to teach it at a 3rd grade level. So I can simplify it in a way where anybody can understand it. So I could take any difficult topic and teach it to you in ways, oh yeah, that makes sense.
That's
right?
really good.
And that goes back to being a teacher, right? And I didn't know that when I wanted to be a school teacher, but it's really helpful.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I love that. That's amazing. And what would you consider to be your definition of success?
I feel like I'm living it. I had a mentor, Larry Yach, and the way he said it was being able to live your life daily on a sustainable basis. So every day I could do whatever the hell I want. I love doing this, right? I don't have anybody to answer to. I'm living my life on my terms. Now, is this sustainable long term? Yes. There are a lot of people that want to do more, but is it sustainable? So I get to do what I want every single day, and I can do this every day. I'm not going to burn out. I'm not going to lose sleep. I'm not going to stress out. I'm not going to run out of money. I get to do this every single day, and I can live every day like this, like Groundhog's Day. Like, this is bliss. So I already feel like I'm living it, and that's the definition of success. So definition of success I completely stole from my mentor.
Hey, that's fantastic. That's really good. It sounds like the dream to me. So are there any podcast interviewers, or it doesn't even have to be podcasts, it could be any type of other interviewer or content creator that you like to follow, that you like to consume their content?
Other people's content I like to consume. I don't really consume a lot of other content. I mostly listen to, like right now I'm really diving deep into like the mentor I have right now. But beyond that, I mostly listen to audiobooks. And the reason why I like to listen to audiobooks is because audiobooks, there's an end to it. Like when you watch something on Netflix, it's like a TV series, 4 seasons, you gotta be committed to it, right?
You do.
But you watch a movie, after 2 hours, we're done, right?
Finished.
Yeah. I don't need a part 2 or part 3. And so with an audiobook, I get what I need it in a concise format with as little wasted time as possible. And I like that because it's usually like first principles or something fundamental, like something I can just tweak in my business. The challenge I run into if I listen to other people's podcasts is that, again, I have shiny object syndrome. So like in order to stay focused, I need fewer ideas, not more ideas.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. So I like audiobooks.
Yeah, that makes total sense, especially if one of your superpowers is understanding something at a deep level. Clearly, if you like the idea, you're going to be a little bit more incentivized to understand it and then say, I got to put this into practice. I totally get that. So what audiobooks stand out to you in terms of these are some of the must reads or must listen tos on your list? Do you have any favorites?
I'm going to say the list I'm going to give to everyone, I'll say for the most part, everyone's heard of. I'll add one that doesn't. So I think Extreme Ownership is huge. Never Split the Difference. Let's see, what are some other ones? I like How Leadership Actually Works. That goes back to Larry Yach, one of my mentors. Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. I already mentioned that. So I think these are really pivotal books. And then one book that made a big difference for myself is Rigging in the Game. People may not know that one, by Dan Nicholson, but that is a book that helped me get clarity and eventually stop buying houses, because he wrote that book and then we were business partners in the Whale Club with Paul Sparks. We're no longer all partners inside the Whale Club, but that book fed Club and Club helped me get this clarity to really focus.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And what's been your biggest journey so far in your career, whether it be through the podcast, through your sales training? What's been one of the biggest surprises in your career thus far?
The podcasting. Again, I was a known asset in the Phoenix market, right? Like heavily recruited. Everyone wanted to have lunch with me or whatever in the Phoenix market. But outside of Phoenix, like who the hell is Steve Trang? Like I was trying to sell coaching back in 2015 and I talked to him, who the hell are you? I was like, I'm the person that's making a lot of money. I'm trying to sell you a product that shows you how to make a lot of money. Like, who cares who I am? Like, this stuff works. I'm making a lot of money. They're like, no, we don't know who you are. We don't trust you. Like, okay, fine, whatever. So the podcast really opened up a lot of doors, created a lot of networks, a lot of networking, created a lot of relationships. And the biggest thing, which to me, I think is unfair or unreasonable, is I have a disproportionate amount of authority and respect that I don't really feel like I deserve, because I have the podcast. Like, they're like, you're Steve Trang and this and that. And I was like, I'm just another guy. I'm not this exceptional person. Like, you're putting me on this pedestal here. And I compare it to like the 80s when you were like a published author. It's like, oh my God, that guy's a published author. It's like that, but I'm just another guy, right? Yeah. I'm not that special. So I would say the biggest thing, the biggest journey is going from somebody who was a nobody on a national stage to someone, if I show up at a real estate event, they know who I am, they want to introduce themselves and so on. So I would say that's the biggest one. And it's also, again, helped with the branding and particularly the sales training, because if I didn't have the podcast, they're not going to ask me to go on this cold calling competition. And then I'm not going to be on stage at We Live 19. That all happens, which is like a huge part of my journey, but none of that happens without having a podcast.
And did you think about, I'm sure you didn't even think about that when you said, okay, next week I'm going live back in 2018.
No, if you told me in 18, the life I would have today, there's no freaking way. No, like you're crazy.
That's amazing. That's so cool. Magic of life.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about these relationships and networking, and obviously you've talked about masterminds and things like that, but what are some of the core fundamentals that you could share in terms of building and fostering relationships in the industry, in any industry? If someone's listening to this and they starting to get a little bit of a following, a little bit of a platform, how can they go about growing their network and developing relationships?
It's like anything else. You got to be intentional with it. I used to go to these networking events and it was a complete waste of time because I didn't realize you have to put effort into it. So like I would go to BNI, I would go to Chamber of Commerce meetings, and I go there, we exchange business cards. Okay, that's cool. We should do business together. That's not how it works. You need to reach out to them. You need to call them. You need to get coffee. You need to learn about their home life, their kids, their business, how they get into business. What are they hoping to accomplish in the business? You have to do all these things to create alignment with them. And I completely blew that when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And so today, anyone that's important to me, I'm figuring out a way to be a person that's worth knowing to them. And so right now, today, I mentioned I got Summer. She schedules all my appointment meetings on Zoom for me to have with my regular, most important people. Because my default nature is introvert. My default nature is to sit in an office and just get on my laptop and just like work. That's my default state. So if I'm going to talk to people and have intentional conversations, she reaches out to them and schedules conversations for me to have with them. So I say, here are the 25 people I need to talk to every quarter. And I give it to her, and then she puts appointments on my calendar. So I talk to them at least once a quarter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. And so as an introvert, how do you, even obviously as a podcast host, you have this already down in terms of interviewing, but how do you structure these Zoom calls? You get on and it's like, all right, now what?
Yeah, it's awkward as hell. Like the first minute's always awkward. First 30 seconds always awkward. Hey, how you doing? What's up, Kendall? What's new? That's it. But once you start talking, everything's fine. But like the first 30 seconds is always awkward.
Yeah.
This is the reason. This was my downfall when I was a realtor, because I didn't want to call people and ask them how they were doing. It was weird. Right?
And so the goals of these conversations, is it just to catch up, see what's going on in your life? There's no pitch, right? It's just touch and base.
Just how you doing? That's it.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me because I've never been that person. My whole life, I've never been that person. This is not a great reputation, but if I called you, you knew I was calling you for something. That's who I've been my whole life. And so trying to move away from that.
Yeah.
Although it's not the worst thing in the world because I'm always calling with intention, but it sucks to be known as the guy like I'm calling you because I need something.
Yeah. That's powerful though. That's a really good insight. That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. If you could go back and teach your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Fail faster. Because I was a cocky SOB, right? Like I was always arrogant. I always believed I can do anything and everything. I would just say go out there and fail faster, because it wasn't until I failed that I decided to get a coach. Because I was like, I don't need coaching. These guys are scammers. And so it wasn't until all hope was lost, I was like, okay, maybe I should get a coach. And so failing faster, trying things, do things faster so you can fail, so that you can figure out what you did wrong, so you can get back and do it. So just fail as fast as possible.
That's really good. And so that your first coach, was it specifically around real estate, or was it business, or what area?
It was a real estate agent coach. So he was a realtor. He was I want to say he was a top 10 realtor 15 years in a row or something like that. And yeah, I worked with him and he helped me, not him, like his organization, helped me become a much more astute business person. than I was before I got a coach.
That's incredible. So you had to get to that point of, I don't know what else to do before you even hired someone. So now as a coach to others, how has that shaped like your sales pitch presentation approach?
That is not so much of an issue when we coach. I think the biggest issue is I still struggle on how to get people to take action. It's still unbelievable to me that there are people that will pay me money and not show up to calls. That's my biggest struggle. And I feel like I'm getting better at it because, again, I have my own mentor and I'm watching what he's doing to get more success for his students. So I'm mimicking some of those things and it's working. But yeah, I would say people that have, that's a great question, Kendall. And I have to think about this more because I was the guy who was crashing and had nearly maxed out his credit card and couldn't find a way to pay for it. But then because I needed it so bad, I found a way to pay for it. So I think maybe I probably should push harder on people that say they can't pay for it. Because right now, you can't afford it is okay. And we'll say some things and objection handle, but I'm not cutthroat. I won't squeeze the last nickel out of them. But that's what someone had to do to me.
And it changed your life.
And it changed my life.
That's amazing.
So
that's amazing.
I have to think about that some more.
Yeah. So what makes you feel like your best self or most inspired?
I am most inspired when I see people winning. Go back to Creating Millionaires. It's incredibly fulfilling when you help somebody and they tell you how you changed their lives. Someone say they were finally able to buy a house. Someone was able to buy this car that they wanted. That was on their list. I was able to do this deal that made me this much money. We get messages, hey, I'm a millionaire now. That is so inspiring. That keeps me going. That you cannot replace that feeling.
Sure. Yeah. And it's so impactful because it's not that you just change that one person's life. That has a ripple effect that there will be people that you don't even know that you've impacted from that, because that's huge. It's incredible.
Exactly.
That's amazing. Steve, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and being so generous with your information and just sharing your story with us. How can we give back to you? What types of connections or resources are you currently looking for?
Right now, the people we're looking to work with are people that are having conversations and they're not getting the kind of sales they want, right? If they're looking to close more sales, I would say those are people we're looking to work with. I know that people that work with us generally very quickly get a 10x ROI. Those are people we're looking for. Beyond that, help me spread the good gospel of capitalism and entrepreneurship. Because again, I don't know when profit became a bad word, but it has become a bad word. And I'm unhappy about that.
Yeah. On a mission to take that off the bad word list. So your sales training for people that are interested, is it just real estate? Is it any industry? What is it geared towards?
It's industry agnostic. It doesn't really matter. Now, obviously, we're a lot better on the real estate side, but really anyone that wants to get better at sales, because sales is sales. All we're doing is trying to figure out what problem you're trying to solve. And then we see whether we are qualified to help you solve that problem.
Love it. I love it. And so if someone wants to reach out to you or get more information, where can they do that?
The best place, you go to closemoresales.com, or you can find us on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify's Disruptors, or on Instagram at steve.trang, steve.trang.
Amazing. And we'll put all of that in the show notes for sure. So thank you so much, Steve. This has been such a great conversation. Learned a ton. I'll be going back. I written some notes down here. I'll definitely be going back, listening to the replay. So many great nuggets. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank everyone for listening and just taking part. This has been absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey there, brand fan. If these insider strategies on building influence and cultivating real community got your wheels turning, like and subscribe for more conversations that cut through the noise and get to what really works. And if you're ready to turn these insights into action, head over to onlybrandfans.com to unlock the next level. Until next time, build something they can't ignore.